Welcome to Real Talk, the unedited, scripted, unfiltered show where I sit down with a gaming personality and talk about anything and everything. Few people within our industry have excelled at so many different roles like today's guest, from being a journalist to trolling our heroes and lately to putting on the biggest events in the scene. He's been involved in competitive esports for a very, very long time. It is an honor to have him here on the show. Carmac, welcome to Real Talk, buddy. How's it going, man?
It's good to be here. I'm actually extremely good. I'm in Poland, and it's fantastic.
Awesome.
We had, I was supposed to get my visa to China, and I booked my flight to go to Warsaw to pick up the visa in the embassy. The event unfortunately got cancelled, but I didn't want to waste my flight because we couldn't get the money back, so I just flew in and spending some time with friends and family.
Awesome, awesome. Well, let's talk about recent events. Obviously, the other day you guys had to make a pretty big announcement with the IEM being canceled in China. For those that aren't aware, can you kind of explain the situation and what occurred with that?
So we were supposed to have an event from September the 30th to October 4th, League of Legends and StarCraft 2 event, Intel Extreme Masters, at the same venue as we had it last year, and it was quite successful in Guangzhou at the Anime, Comics and Games trade show. But unfortunately, there is, as if you read websites, if you're older than 15, you should be aware that there is friction between China and Japan right now, and because of the nature of the show, which is anime and comics, it's more than 50% Japanese culture, and there was a relatively significant threat that there would be riots and things like that. I've heard about a canon, as in the photo manufacturer factory being burnt down, and Toyota factories being attacked in China, so it's relatively serious. So the venue got cancelled for us. We're always, or usually, a part of a bigger venue like a Comic-Con, for example, Gamescom or CeBIT. So we had no venue, and this shortly before the event, the arrangements were made, and we just weren't able to secure an event venue which would be up to the same grade and which would allow us to run the same standard of a tournament. Simple as that.
Now, how long?
Very unfortunate.
Yeah, how long or how far along? I'm sorry. Were you guys in planning? Cutting an event this close has got to be kind of draining on resources and whatnot, correct?
Well, we had our flights booked. We had already shipped the equipment because to clear customs to China and things like that. Everything was shipped. Everything was prepared. Branding was already produced. Fairly big deal because all we needed to do is just show up and run the event. It was that far along. So we had to, cancel all our reservations, see if we could get the money back and things like that. There's significant financial loss for the company as well.
In terms of just a damage to that, I mean, how do you guys kind of classify that? Do you just move on? Do you try to salvage it in some way? What is the process for you and the company really moving forward?
I mean, the only real thing to do is just make sure that no one's hurt on our account. Some players may have booked flights and things like that, so we're talking to them to find a resolution which would not leave them hurt after the process. Obviously, we're not directly culpable, but we do believe in doing the right thing. So otherwise, we just move on and focus on something else because there's nothing to do. We lost the venue, we lost the tournament. Sadly, we didn't want this to happen, but it happened, and we just need to move on and figure out our next steps. And our next steps should be very, very positive. We're going to new territories for Intel Extreme Masters, and we're going to break new ground for Intel Extreme Masters as well. We're going to have events which of a kind which we have never had before. So the rest of the season looks really good.
Kind of alluding to your press release there, you said the same thing within that as well. Can you kind of give any hints, parts of the world, anything like that? You say new territory, and as far as I can remember, you guys have pretty much been everywhere except Australia. So is that where it's going? Are you going somewhere else? What's going on? Can you give us any more info?
We're going to a couple of countries we had never visited before, but countries which have had relatively major esports events before. One of which is in Asia, one of which is in Europe. I can't give more details.
Okay.
Can't give more details than that. But, probably next week we're going to have an official announcement about that.
What is the process for you guys like when it comes to choosing these venues? It seems like with this cancellation of the China event, you guys are kind of already on the ball and already moving on to next stuff. Was that already pre-planned with these new destinations, or were you guys that quick in getting the new venues?
No, we typically plan the Intel Extreme Masters season around, let's say we begin around February, March. And the only, and the season is pretty much planned, as you may know from, MLG work, that you need to book your venue really, really early, like 6 months in advance and things like that. Sometimes the community just doesn't understand that, for big trade show halls, for example, like convention centers and such, you just don't have any wiggle room when it comes to scheduling these venues. So we book well in advance. Sometimes the paperwork isn't finalized, and which is why we don't always announce events super early. But we typically have 5 to 6 events per Intel Extreme Masters season, and we do know well in advance where we want to go. But unfortunately, due to the many legal reasons, contracts not being signed and whatnot, we can't always announce them early. But probably it will take us a couple of weeks to announce the rest of the season, I think.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we're going to revisit IEM a little bit later, obviously, but I do want to kind of talk about how you got to where you are. So kind of just starting from the very beginning, man, where were you born?
I was born in Kielce, which is a city of 200,000 people in Poland. My mother's Russian, my father's Polish. I was born and raised there, and I lived there until I was 20, more or less.
Now, what did your parents do for work kind of when you were younger, as a child and teenager?
As a child and teenager, my father used to be a judo coach for a really long time, and my mother used to teach Russian, especially, well, for a long time. They did very, very well for themselves, or relatively well for themselves, while there was still communism in Poland. But after the political transformation of the country, basically stuff changed. Russian stopped being a relevant language in education and schooling and such. It was way tougher, to find a good job, and somehow my father was a part-time judo coach, and they both had a shoe store at the local marketplace in Poland, which is a relatively, let's say, a job, a walk of life which isn't extremely respected where I come from, actually.
Now, did you ever get on?
My family wasn't so well off.
Did you ever jump on the mat with your father at all? Do you have any training when it comes to judo? That seems very interesting to have a parent kind of take that up as a job early on in your life.
Oh, I have a black belt in judo. Actually, I was a referee for 10 years. I competed at a fairly high level. I beat several. I've never been a Polish champion, but I've beaten several Polish champions in tournaments, and maximum I got, I think, was top 3 in Poland.
Wow.
Although I do have a better memory from a judo tournament, but no, I've never fought my father on the mat. The age difference and the weight difference was always too significant. Judo's actually probably, I would say, 66% the reason I'm the person that I am today.
I kind of want to go off on a tangent with that. We always hear interesting stories of people that are kind of classically trained in a lot of these different fighting styles. Have you ever had an encounter where you've been really forced to use it out in the public, and what was that like? I always love hearing these stories where people kind of pick on the random person, and then all of a sudden they just, whatever they know, they use it on the person, and they picked on the wrong guy, man. I love hearing those stories.
Actually, I don't drink. I've never been drunk. I don't go out too much, so I'm going to have to disappoint you here.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I don't think I've ever had to use judo in a situation where there was any friction.
Okay. Now, do you have any siblings, or are you only a child?
I've got an older sister who's a diplomat right now in Moscow for the Polish embassy, and a younger sister who was actually more successful at judo than I was. She was the Polish champion several times, and quite proud of her. Now they both live in very distant cities from me.
Mm. What was it like growing up with two sisters? Was that a unique childhood experience for you?
I have to say I was generally a good kid, but I kind of made my younger sister to be kind of my younger brother, if you know what I mean. And I teamed up against my older sister with my younger sister, which I very deeply regret these days.
Okay, all right. Now, kind of for the ignorant, which I classify myself as, what was life like growing up for you in Poland? Was it kind of what everyone else had in terms of a childhood, or was it unique to a lot? I guess unique to someone like myself here in America.
I think compared to the US, you guys, all of you guys, I mean, when I watch Real Talk, everybody mentions consoles and Nintendo and stuff like that. We didn't have any of that. We grew up with Ataris, Commodore 64s, and Amigas. And, you know, mostly if you were a relatively lucky kid. But in general, I have to say I had a fantastic childhood. Very happy. The fact that we didn't have all these toys and electronic gadgets made us, go out and play soccer a lot and be creative with our free time. So generally, I have to say I can't really say what's special or different about it because obviously I never grew up in America or any other country, so I can't make any differences. But it's just, just like everywhere else except European, except Polish, I guess.
All right.
If that makes any sense.
Without the distraction kind of that video games can sometimes be to youth, what was school like for you? Were you the good student when you went to school?
Actually, I had two phases. So when I was a kid, I was actually fairly good at sports. I was good at drawing. I was good at math. I was relatively good at anything. So I was pampered as a little talented kid, and I had zero problems until the age of 14. I didn't have to. I just needed to turn up. I remembered everything from classes and straight A's, most likely. Then high school, there's a huge jump, and showing up was no longer enough. That was my expectation, that the world would work exactly the same way, and showing up was not enough, and my grades really slipped because I'm a really lazy fucker. So that was a really tough time until I adjusted. It took me at least 1.5 years to really properly adjust to how the real world works and how you need to put in work to get some gain and effects. And I learned also from there that your first impression will take you a really long way. And my first impression with the teachers was my teacher's first impression of me was relatively bad, and I had to. It took me another 1.5 years to dig myself out of that hole and get actually very decent grades again.
I'm kind of curious. Your English is very good, and I know that obviously you're from Poland. Do you speak any other languages? And did you learn all that kind of growing up?
I speak Russian. I'm naturally bilingual. Although I have to say my Russian has deteriorated a little bit, but I understand everything. I can't express everything I want to. I speak English. My Russian is worse than my English. And I speak, let's say, passable German, slightly above basic German, between basic and intermediate, I would say. And I mean, I can give full interviews in German these days, but they're clumsy. And I can insult people in about 25 different languages.
Well,
I can actually say,
okay.
in I think 12 or 11 languages, your mother should not change her lipsticks so often because I have a rainbow on my cock.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah,
I've heard that one
I'm
before
not,
from Mutzat, so.
yeah, I'm not extremely proud of it, but hey, it's something that makes a boring guy different from others.
All right, so it's a Friday night. School's done with. What do you do? What do you go out and do for fun with your friends? What's a normal night out for a high schooler, I guess, in Poland?
Friday after school, I went to the judo gym, and I just do the training, go home, and just do nothing.
Really, you never really went out and kind of lived it out. I guess is what we would say here.
High school and university or college is typically the period where people try to discover their boundaries, figure out social life, how this shit works. Go out and try to finger bang some girl that would let herself be finger banged or whatever the hell the youth does these days.
Right.
Those days, I never did that. I never tried alcohol, never tried cigarettes, which is very uncommon for Poland. And I just, I don't know. I guess I guess I'm a little bit autistic this way, and I guess I'm a little bit antisocial, to be honest. I rarely ever go out, to bars and stuff because people get drunk and drift away from me. If that makes any sense. But yeah, well, I was a very boring kid when I was in my teens.
Okay. Well, you mentioned university there. Where did you go to university, and what did you study?
That's a complicated issue.
Okay.
I went to university first in my hometown because I didn't pass the entrance exam for the Warsaw University, one of the most prestigious ones in Poland. Obviously for English, I wanted to study English because I was too lazy to do anything else that would require preparation from me. Obviously, if you speak very good English, then you just go and take a test of English and then you should be fine. You could study that. So I spent a year at my local college. Then I applied for the second time to have the prestigious degree from the university. By that time, I was deep into Unreal Tournament, so I actually went to Warsaw, went to the entrance examination again for university. But the thing that my parents didn't know was that outside were a couple of people that I met through UT, and I wanted to hang out with them. So I wrote the test as quickly as I was able to, and left without even double checking it. And apparently I passed relatively well, and I was in Warsaw. Because of gaming, I failed the first year, and I repeated the first year. So it was 3 times in a row. First year of freshman college English, even though I probably spoke better English than most people in my classes. And I kind of failed that. I went back to my hometown. I got admitted to, I think, the first year of English back at where I started originally. So it took me 4 years to complete the first year of university in English, and it so happened pretty much every single year I was one of the best students when it comes to spoken and written English. So I'm just a big real life failure, I guess you could say that. And then I finished that. The 3-year bachelor's degree, and I wanted to complete a master's degree in Krakow at university. But I was too lazy by then and traveling too much already for esports to actually manage to finish that. Long story, and just all in this aspect, I'm responsible for like 50% of gray hair that my parents have.
Well, you mentioned that you were kind of heavily involved in Unreal Tournament. I want to kind of jump back to the beginning of that. You mentioned you grew up also on Atari and games kind of that age. What were some of the other games that you kind of started to find that passion for?
So I actually, other kids had Ataris. I never had an Atari. My first piece computer was Amiga 500. My father brought it from Germany. I played games and some really big classics like Sensible Soccer and Cannon Fodder. These are the ones that I still remember very, very fondly. Then after a few years break, we got a PC for my sister who needed it for university, and I started actually my first home PC that I really had, you know, access to on a daily basis. I was 18 years old, I think, and that was my first PC. But I was really, really passionate about video games and things like that, and internet wasn't extremely common in Poland, home internet connections, which is why internet cafes or PC bangs, and as people that know StarCraft would call them, they were very popular, and I was one of the cool kids that was one of the best guys in my city, and in an internet cafe, and we spent a ton of time there playing Unreal Tournament, and so many strange and amazing memories. That's where I kind of got my let's say proper social life in terms of youth and stuff. What people have in high school, going out partying and getting drunk for the first time. My internet cafe times where I kind of became let's call it a cooler kid.
Now, was Unreal Tournament kind of that game that kindled the competitive drive or competitive spirit for you when it came to video games, or was it something else after that, or maybe before that?
I originally started with Quake 2. Had a really short stint with Quake 3, but I had no idea what I was doing. Unreal Tournament was the game. Literally, it was the game, and it was you wanted to be better than the other guy. I wanted to duel the entire time with the other guys. I wanted to be the best in my internet cafe. And it so happened that my internet cafe was the best in my city, and my city was the best in Poland, because the rest of Poland happened to play Quake 3, but that's besides the point. Yeah, so that's where I competed, and actually the team I played for and the team I began to lead later on was undefeated in tournaments for something like 2.5 years until we decided to call it quits. So big competitive background there.
Would you say that was kind of your beginning in esports, was leading that team and playing for that team?
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, that's how I began, and it was so new, so fresh that people didn't know stuff like seeding. When we had tournaments, I was the guy discussing on forums, look, this doesn't make any sense. We need seeding, and we need this, we need that, we need systems. And I've always been passionate about sports, so I would read the sports daily newspaper in Poland, so I had a ton of background information about sports. I was a judo referee, a judo competitor, so I knew stuff like, hey, you should seed people. If they're from the same team, from the same city, that means they play all the time with each other. So if we travel halfway across Poland to play a tournament, it's not cool if I meet my training partner in the first round. That's not why I travel. If somebody's highly ranked, it's not cool if they meet in the first round and stuff like that. I was actually one of the first guys in the Polish Unreal Tournament community to actually push those standards that I knew from real life into gaming. It was quite funny because we had lots of fights over that type of stuff. But that forum trolling and discussing, that got me into I discovered that I like to share my opinions about gameplay, what sucks, what doesn't, which map should be played in tournaments, things like that. And that kind of transitioned me slowly into the guy that pissed off Angel Munoz.
And what year was this around? This was, I guess, early 2001-ish, 2002-ish, or
2000, 2001, 2002. These 3 years were my big UT years.
now when did you really kind of start working within the industry, and what started that kind of what kicked you to kind of do that?
I guess I wanted to express myself. I found if somebody would have told me when I was 18 that I would become a journalist, I wouldn't believe them. But I don't even remember why and how, but there was a website, it was called accessreality.com, the predecessor of ES Reality, and by happenstance I got a login and a password of a guy who was an admin there. I don't know how, and I made a plan to write a column and post it under his name, just so that people would like it, people would notice me, and then they would let me write on that website. That was my plan, to get into, the ES Reality website and write my opinions and things like that. I had no idea about, and no imagination that I could make money out of it eventually or whatever. I just wanted to write stuff about gaming and share opinion. And then ES Reality pretty much got created, where Access Reality broke up after the internet bubble of 2000, I think. Or 2000, 2001, and Sujoy, one of the guys behind Access Reality, started ES Reality and created a system where anybody could just post anything. So I began to be one of the most hardcore posters there, and I began esports coverage there. Wrote interviews, did interviews, wrote columns and stuff like that. Very boring story, actually.
Now, you mentioned everyone, I guess not everyone, but you're pretty famous for pissing off Angel Munoz, like you said. What would you say was kind of your edge that you had, that a lot of people kind of were driven to your articles back then, prior to leaving for GGL?
I think it was, I don't know. Actually, I know a ton of people who write better than I do, and better than I ever could write, even if I tried. So maybe, I guess, my persistence, my consistency, maybe that, and maybe the fact that I actually had a relatively good idea of what the world looks like or should look like in when you create a competitive environment, because I've helped organize judo tournaments. I was a judo referee. I refereed real proper tournaments, where it's not like refereeing a StarCraft 2 match where you come up with a piece of paper and a couple of players. Oh, I cross out Ohana, I cross out Daybreak or whatever. It's more like you actually have to be responsible and take responsibility for other people's lives, because they're like trying to strangle the hell out of each other and things like that. And if you don't notice the guy tapping out on time, especially if it's like the age group 15, 14, then you might be actually responsible for someone's death. Long story short, maybe I just I was able to translate my experiences from real life into esports and put that into columns, if that makes any sense. I don't know.
What would you say your big break was back then, if you had to kind of pin it to one article in the ESR days? Would it be maybe one of the interviews, or what would you pin it to?
My biggest break, actually, I think, was not an article. There was a series where I got a little bit, some of them, when I look at them, I cringe. Some of them were quite cool, but I began criticizing the CPO, which was back in the days the esports organization, because I didn't like their policies and how they went around about their business. For example, there was one CPL event where they proudly announced that they seeded Fatality with the #1 seed and then didn't seed anyone else, which effectively meant that Fatality wasn't even seeded because nobody else was seeded. I mean, he wasn't seeded against, they didn't try to put him on another part of the bracket with anyone else. So he got #1 seed, fantastic. It's still completely random. And I began noticing the faults in the organization and how it was, how they were conducting their business, and I became kind of known. And then I got invited actually by the organizers of the Electronic Sports World Cup in 2003 to cover the event for ES Reality. They paid my trip and my hotel. And by the way, fantastically spectacular event, 2003, and I don't think there's any event that has significantly beaten that particular event. They had everything. They organized everything almost perfectly. So if anybody these days writes on Reddit or whatever, oh my goodness, such a fantastic event, how this industry has gone forward with, in these 3 years since StarCraft was launched, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. I'm sorry. And there was a documentary shot there by a community guy where I was an interviewer, and it was called ES Reality Uncut, and people simply loved it, and there were some very famous community quotes out of that later on. So that was actually my big break, I think, that documentary.
Now, in my kind of researching a lot about you, from ESR, it was direct to GGL. Was there a bigger transition period there, or was it pretty much GGL approached you for the job and you immediately said yes? What was that transition like? Because in my research, it was pretty instant.
It was actually. I had several opportunities to work on another website, and mind you, I hadn't earned a single cent writing for ES Reality, and I wrote pretty much one column a week, one interview a week, news items, coverage. I stayed up all night covering QuakeCon and things like that, just because I was passionate about it, and I just loved it. Kind of like similar to DJ Wheat. He was just commentating because he loved it. And actually, funny thing is, he lied his way into a casting job, and I almost broke into another guy's account to have a writing job. So kind of a similar way, and if there's anything I can, as a digression, if there's anything people ask me sometimes is, what do I do to get into esports? Just frigging do it.
Right.
There's always a way. If you can't find a way to do it, then you're not fit to be doing that. To be doing it. So yeah, one day just some websites approached me, hey, maybe you can work for us for €100 a month, maybe for some hardware, maybe for some trips. And I really didn't enjoy these websites, and I always thought I would be better off just doing what I really enjoy. And suddenly this guy Hakeem came up on IRC and said, hey dude, maybe you wanna work for GGL, we're gonna pay you like $500, and $500 is for a first job next to like part-time coaching judo. That was a freaking big deal for me. It was like mind-blowing. And I took it, and I was like completely amazed. And when my father found out that I brought in $500 worth of cash, he's like, did you gamble it? How did you how did you come by this money? Because he couldn't get through his head that there's this esports thing out there and you could earn money by writing about it. And for quite a long time he actually thought that I play video games for money while gambling, things like that. He couldn't believe that I actually got a job in esports. And in his defense, frankly, I couldn't believe it myself. So, yeah, and just if I could say something else to young people, um, GGL wanted me. They were a Santa Monica-based company. They wanted me. They wanted to bring me to Santa Monica,
Hmm.
and I chickened out. I said, "Hey, I need to finish college first before you bring me over." And that ship sailed, and I lost the opportunity. So, if you young man, if you get an opportunity like that, ever, just fucking take it.
Well, I guess I fucked that one
Because
up then.
that's one of my biggest regrets about my GGL career, that I didn't go to LA and I didn't try that. You had a similar experience?
Yes, yes, with MLG in New York.
Oh yeah, you didn't want to go to New York, but well,
Exactly. So we'll see. We'll see if I live to regret it like that. Now, what was the GGL job? Was it simply just doing exactly what you were doing on ESR, or were there more kind of aspects to it?
well, so I was supposed to do content for the website.
Okay.
And actually, one of the biggest breaks during my GGL job, there was this guy, Patrick E. And I visited the office in Santa Monica. I had short, like, couple of weeks stints here and there in Santa Monica. I visited the Santa Monica office, and I said, "Hey guys, why don't you guys give me a camera? I'd like to shoot some stuff, interviews and whatnot." And there was some kind of process. I had no idea, because I'd never worked for a company. And this Patrick guy, he just took his credit card and just said, "Hey, I'm just going to order a camera. Just talk to the guys, what camera they recommend. I'll order it, and screw that. Don't worry about the process." Best thing that ever happened to me. Seriously. I mean, changed my life. I began recording interviews and stuff. Chiefly responsible for content, still pissing off Angel a little bit, writing stuff. Later on, they hired a big-time, celebrated journalist who would actually tell me that everything I was doing was shit. Made me want to quit my job like 12 times over, and I was really, really angry and frustrated, but he actually made me get my stuff together a little bit, and turned me into a half-decent writer from a relatively poor writer. I can't claim to be a good writer these days, but if I do have a saving grace, I guess it would be that I have thoughts that people are interested in. But my writing skill, I wouldn't rely on so much.
And that was an outsider to esports coming in,
Yeah.
saying that to you. Okay.
He was a complete outsider, and obviously that was a mistake. But the fact that
You learned something, yeah.
he knew the trade, he taught me so much. He pissed me off to no end, but he taught me so much. I mean, if there's anything in content production, be it writing, be it video editing, remove any sort of repetition, condense it to the absolute maximum, because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. Providing content in video or in writing for the internet is about condensation and packing as much meaning as possible into as few words as possible.
Now, a coworker of yours, we learned from DJ Wheat in his Real Talk, you guys were pretty good friends from what he was saying. What was it like meeting Wheat for the first time? And I'm sure you knew of him before meeting him, correct?
Yes, I knew of him, and I actually criticized him a fair bit, because I'm a very, glasses half empty kind of guy, and I pick a lot, and especially in my early years, I was a little bit misguided with that. So actually, initially, for most of people that are actually my good esports friends, and I respect them a really great deal, I used to dislike DJ Wheat's casting in the very, very beginning. But right now, I have to say, when it comes to esports and probably people in general, he's one of my most favorite people on the planet, seriously. And not many people know that this guy chugs probably like 2 liters of energy drinks every day at the very least.
He's gonna have a
He's
heart
so
attack.
hyped. He is. He's so hyped. He's so passionate, and the way he rages sometimes at Live on 3 and stuff. That's the essence of DJ Wheat. I mean, I just can't describe. I honestly I don't remember when I met him for the first time, but I fucking love the guy. It's just I don't know what it is about him. I love him to death. That's all I have to say about DJ Wheat.
Now,
But I do have a DJ Wheat story I can share with
that's
you.
where I was about to go to. Wheat always has or people always have a story with Wheat. So what is yours?
So there was this HHGL thing, which was the Hip Hop Gaming League, where actually today, if somebody did it with StarCraft, people would go ape shit and say how awesome this is, how awesome of a eye opener it is to the public, blah blah blah. Back in the days, people were, really, really. What's the score? Oh, interesting. Back in the days, people were really pretty much shitting on the HHGL. But there was this finals event where Snoop Dogg was the commissioner, and there was B-Real, Eric V, some DJ Eric V. You probably never heard of him, Method Man, and a couple of other people playing in that hip hop gaming league. And Snoop Dogg was the commissioner, and GGL organized all of that. So there's this Hollywood club and finals and MTV coverage and all of that stuff, and they had cameras and everything, and DJ Wheat was supposed to commentate. He was supposed to shoutcast that game. And Snoop Dogg, who by that time had spent some time in what they call the green room, you may guess why. Snoop Dogg at that time was supposed to be the color commentator for DJ Wheat. DJ is really pumped because it's really, cool to commentate with Snoop Dogg, and I might twist it a little bit, but DJ Wheat's really pumped, and Snoop Dogg's like, who is this nerd? And DJ Wheat's trying to start and just do flow play-by-play and stuff, and Snoop Dogg's like, just shut up and agree with everything I say. And, MTV cameras, everything. Snoop Dogg, celebrity who got paid, fairly big money to do this event for us. And there's DJ Wheat, disrespected, like he's, what the fuck is this guy supposed to do now, right? After something like that. So DJ Wheat assumes it was a joke, attempts to carry on later on, and Snoop Dogg repeats the exact same thing. Like, if they paid me a big load of cash, I wouldn't want to trade places with DJ Wheat. He had to pretty much, be, as I remember it, he was pretty much, 20% of the commentary was maybe him, and 80% was useless Snoop Dogg commentary at the time. So that's my DJ Wheat story. I bet he was pissed as hell. You should ask him next time you get a chance to speak with him.
And he didn't rage at him. He kept his cool.
He kept his cool. DJ Wheat was super professional. I mean, what was he supposed to do?
Right.
Yeah. The commish is telling him to shut up twice in a row. I mean, he could either shut up or completely spoil the broadcast. I mean, it was relatively clear that Snoop Dogg hadn't been briefed that DJ Wheat is the best broadcaster in the business, and that he would probably carry the hell out of Snoop Dogg, but Snoop Dogg apparently didn't care. So that's my DJ Wheat story. You know
if there are VODs available for that, or if video footage still exists from back then? Because I've always heard this story, but I've never seen it. I've never seen these broadcasts before.
I don't know. We had this. We used GGL used Brightcove, which was like a YouTube style system for businesses, but the entire database went. But if you want another good story about another esports celebrity these days, I can tell you an ESWC 2004 story about Too Good, if you want to hear that.
Sure. I love Too Good stories. I think everyone else does too.
So Too Good at the time was a Quake player, and it was he wasn't a good duelist back in the Quake 3 days, but he was a very good TDM player. And Too Good's like, most of the time he doesn't care. Seriously, he's just gonna be, all he cares about is being funny and, just being himself, goofing around and stuff like that. And at the time, I was kind of, let's call it anti-fatality, because I have to say, a little bit irritated with his marketing and how he was played out to be the best thing there ever was in esports, where there were people with comparable results in esports. So there was not such a distance between Fatality and other players, but he got really, really amazing marketing. And I was making fun of the tiger, if you know Smooth, the tiger that Fatality always put on top of his monitor when he played. And it's a story where, let's just say it was one of the mistakes I've made during my adventure with esports, but I was randomly talking about Fatality with Too Good, and I'm like, somebody should steal that tiger, I said. And I was joking, but Jay's like, yeah, I'll do it. Like, no, you won't do it.
And this is 2004, you said?
2004, yeah.
Okay, so a young Jay. Okay, that changes things.
Yeah, and he goes, no, I'll do it. There's no problem. Like, fuck you. No, seriously, I'm gonna steal that thing. And I'm like, 5 beers says you're not gonna do it. And he says, I'll do it. He grabs a bag. Fatality's not there. He walks over to the painkiller tournament area, and he jacks that, tiger, puts it in the bag, and walks away. And I find it funny because I didn't believe he ever would do that.
Mm-hmm.
He walks away. He walks out, and then Fatality's training partner and some other guy grab Jay at the exit and like, what the hell are you doing? Why did you do this? Blah 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 blah. And I will look on from a distance. Fatality walks up to Jay and he asks him like, why the hell did you do this? And Jay's like, for 10 beers. And the sad part was that first of all, Fatality didn't really for a long time get along with Jay, where I kind of provoked him into it. It didn't take much, but I did kind of instigate, and he really, really held it against me because he thought that I was actually seriously trying to, do something really, really malicious, where we never had the intention to, throw the tiger away or anything. The unfortunate thing is, and Jonathan, if you're watching, I'm really sorry about this. It was more or less 1 hour before the next playoff game by Fatality in the Painkiller tournament, and it may or may not have affected his focus for the game, which he went on to lose. So, yeah, but it was a funny story nonetheless at the time.
Was this at the was this the $1 million tournament or one of the prelims leading up to it?
No. That was the ESWC. That was the first ever.
Oh, it was ESWC. Okay.
First ever Painkiller tournament.
Okay. Gotcha. Now, I do want to, before we kind of move on, the character that you created, was this created back in the GGL or was this post GGL? And for those that don't know, can you kind of also mention or I guess talk about this character that you created that you're famous for now?
Okay, so ESWC 2005. I had great luck with ESWCs. DJ Wheat was there, by the way. Fantastic event again. We decided to shoot, like, goof around. Back then there was a guy from Sweden, Zorg. He was a UT player that I knew, one of the most creative and one of the most talented people that I knew, that I know still. And we just wanted to goof around, and we were doing all sorts of random stuff. We had a World Cyber Games champion in Unreal Tournament steal mouse pads on camera from from an against all authority stand where they were displaying the mouse pads, and he stole like 7 or 8 of them before they noticed anything. And after they noticed anything, he still jacked one of the mouse pads. There's a video of that on my YouTube channel. And at some point, I decided maybe it would be funny to pretend, to do an interview where I'm this goofy guy who doesn't speak any English, but is trying so hard to interview a guy, a player. Everybody in Quake knew me. Everybody in Unreal Tournament knew me. So we went for CS and we found this guy Zet, who was probably the most, in that era, the most upcoming CS player in the world. And I began interviewing him, and I insulted his mother in Swedish towards the end of the interview. And by the way, I later on found out that his mother watched all of his interviews, and she saw that.
Oh no.
So, yeah, I found out when Zet was actually transferred into SK Gaming, and I worked for SK Gaming, and as soon as I found out, I asked Zed to apologize to his mother from me profusely, which is not the only mother story I have associated with that lipstick line. And I was interviewing him, and it turned out goofy, and it turned out funny to some extent, and I decided that I would keep doing that. And that's how it originated, and I was this goofy Ukrainian guy who would interview people with some random stuff completely. I didn't know what I was doing. There were a couple of interviews where I would burst out laughing and spoil it altogether. But long story short, yeah, that's kind of how it originated. And by the way, Ushat is a name of a character in a super awesome Polish movie. It has nothing to do, the similarity of sound with Borat, it has nothing to do with Borat. But whatever. But the other story, sorry to just keep on talking, with the lipstick is at the 2004 ESWC, with the Fatality Tiger ESWC. I was learning the lipstick sentence from my Swedish friends. And we were sitting watching the Quake tournament, and there was a bigger group of players, and I was sitting next to Swedes, and there was a Danish guy sitting in front of me, on one row ahead. And they're teaching me this, and I have it on my notepad, and I'm reading this out, and the Swedes are giggling, and then they tell me that Swedish is very similar to Danish, and if you want to sound Danish, all you need to do is just speak Swedish with your mouth full of potatoes. So what do? I reach for my bag, I take, two handfuls of Haribo, stuff them in my mouth, I tap a Danish Quake player on the back that was sitting in front of me, and I go, and so on and so forth, about his mother that his mother shouldn't change her lipstick so often because I have a rainbow, you know where.
Right.
And the Swedes are pissing their pants. And like, this shit isn't this funny. What the hell's going on? I mean, they're really, really laughing. And I find out later on that the Danish Quake player, Brescia was his name, was sitting next to his own mother.
Oh, Jesus, man. They didn't say anything to you?
He understood and he laughed. She luckily didn't.
Ah, okay.
So, lucky break for me. Let's just say I was fairly stupid in my early 20s.
Now, a lot of people kind of know you, or know this character, I should say, from the probably from a lot of the stuff that I think you've done at Home Story Cup. The one that comes to mind was with Machine, how you were basically... You were pretty convinced that he was Idra, and he was pretty convinced that you thought he was Idra. It was an awesome, hilarious interview. Go check that out if you guys haven't seen it. But who's been your favorite person to troll with this character?
So there are two guys. As I went along, I became better at it, and I started using kind of psychology in order to get the correct reaction. And I'll tell you kind of how I built the Machine interview. Is first of all, I used Huck, who's a guy that loves to joke around, right?
Sure.
You know, Chris. I used Huck to introduce me to Machine, where, you know, the plan was later on, if Machine got any suspicion, then he would click that, oh shit, Huck played a prank on the poor guy, and now I have to deal with it. So that was step one. Step two was actually, you know, apologizing my English small, blah, blah, blah. And step three was engaging him in a conversation for long enough where he would feel really bad if he walked away. And I got him to commit EG player, yes. American, yes. Zerg, yes. Zerg is underpowered, yes. Check, check, check. Idra. Okay. So by that time, there's no way Machine can, you know, walk away from the interview. There's no way he can do that. And I pulled exactly the same mechanic of a prank. Again, ESWC this time, 2006, on a Swedish Dota player, Bogdan. And it was, okay, Swedish player, yes. SK Gaming player, yes, fantastic. And I talk with him. And then he was a Dota player, but SK Gaming at the time was extremely famous for the Counter-Strike lineup. And I pulled the same, you know, bait and switch on him. Or I don't know if bait and switch applies, doesn't really matter. And I got him to say, I think 21 or 22 times, I played Dota for SK. Because I was calling him a liar and, you know, stuff like that. He got really, really emotional and angry and brought in the SK Gaming manager to explain the entire situation. Little did he know I worked for SK, so that added the extra layer of humor. That was one of my favorite pranks, and the other one was the recent League of Legends Skara interview where I decided that I would confuse the shit out of the guy by saying something which grammatically wouldn't make any sense, and the sentence has no meaning. Your team are have tomorrow big, or your team are have tomorrow big. It was never supposed to have any meaning, and he was doing such a phenomenal job, you know, trying to be a good interviewee and trying to understand what the hell I meant, and just, you know, the effect was apparently quite funny, and it burnt me forever with the League of Legends community because every player knows me these days.
Yeah. Do you feel like, is there any community left that you can kind of jump to these days? I feel like you're pretty well known, at least that character is well known, especially after the League of Legends one.
I have to say that I wanted to pluck my eyes out the moment I found out 2010 Gamescom, first ever Intel Extreme Masters tournament for StarCraft 2. Day 9 had no idea who I was.
Oh man, that would have been perfect.
And I introduced myself to him, like, you know, perfect English, everything. Hey, I'm this and this guy. And he says, oh, nice. What? Who? And I wanted to freaking kill myself. So the rest of the event I actually spent walking around, you know, giving people blank expressions. And, you know, Artosis, the alpha nerd, knew me from a long time before, but I walked past Artosis like 12 times, and I just gave him like a nod, hoping that he wouldn't know who I was. You know, it must have been very weird for Artosis. Like, I surely knew, you know, Carmac has to know who Artosis is, right?
I think I remember him telling me that story, and he was like, why isn't he just saying hi like I'm fucking Artosis? Why won't he just say hi to me? He's such a dick. And I was like, dude, he was probably just trolling you or something.
And I'm like, up to this day, I like walk around players. If there's a, you know, tiny chance that they don't know who I am, I'm going to be this like weird guy who doesn't say hello and is very, very awkward. And like, Artosis gave me like a look of recognition. Maybe he recognized me, maybe he didn't. I'm not going to risk it. I'm just going to walk by, you know. And like about 12 times we walked by, and I got somebody to pick him up for an interview, and he goes, I know who you are, guy. So yeah, I think Dota 2 is still territory which I can potentially do some damage in.
I guess it'll have to be at an IEM event first, though, huh? I'm sorry. That was dick move. That was a dick.
No, it's fine. We can talk about that.
Well,
But,
I do plan, but I plan to. But I want to mention, just kind of keep on going with your story. Post GGL, you went to SK Gaming, correct? But how many other kind of offers were on the table for that? Because I imagine by then you were pretty well known. Can you talk about who they were? Are you able to? Or
Sure, no problem at all. So I left GGL. Just to give you a backstory, I am completely grateful to them because they gave me pretty much. They were a launch pad for me to become a proper professional or a semi-proper professional. If people don't consider me a proper professional. I decided to leave because I saw that the company wasn't going in the direction where I would benefit from it and where I would be able to do something good for esports, because they were going more mainstream. Apparently esports wasn't working out. It wasn't working out so well. So I got an offer from SK Gaming. I got an offer from Meet Your Makers, who had lots of funding at the time, venture capital, and I got an offer from actually Read More, which is a German website, owned by a company which owns the biggest tabloids in Germany, and they wanted me to start the European Read More, and I remember a conversation with Alex, the managing director of SK Gaming, and we sat down in a cafe in Cologne, and we had delicious carrot cake and tea. And I told him, look, I'll take the job. I'm not gonna, fight about the wage because I don't really care that much about the money. I'll take what you're offering me. And but I might leave you in 1 year because I want to end up with ESL. And if they make an offer, then I will certainly consider leaving. He said okay, and 1 year later I was with ESL actually.
Now, what was your role at SK? Because I mentioned in the intro that you kind of jumped to so many different positions and worn so many hats in this industry. Was SK kind of a lead into ESL in terms of the structure and getting used to that role, or was it completely different?
So at SK Gaming, I was theoretically the editor-in-chief. Practically, I was a one-man content-producing machine. I didn't really do much of being an editor-in-chief, to be honest. I only learned management at ESL, and I noticed how bad of an editor-in-chief or how lacking of an editor-in-chief I used to be at SK Gaming. But I was pretty much a content provider, and I helped manage a couple of players, and I will take 50% of the credit for bringing in Rafa into SK Gaming, who is the most accomplished Quake Live player of all time by far. But that's only because I'm good friends with 04 and I trust his judgment. And he said, "Hey, this dude is going to be a world champion. I can bet you any kind of money." And I said, let's look at him. And I looked at him, and he seemed very, very decent. And turned out 04 was right. And if you don't know who 04 is, you should be ashamed. He's a very, very legendary Quake player.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was in SK Gaming in that capacity, and then I switched to ESL.
Now, before we kind of jump into ESL, because I think that's a whole nother story, I want to spend some time talking about esports journalism in its current state. You spent probably I guess the better half of your esports career building esports journalism, being in the very thick of it, at least European esports journalism. But you make that face, but you did. I mean, you were the editor-in-chief of probably one of the biggest teams back then, because EG was nowhere near the size that it is now. SK Gaming was pretty large. What are your general opinions right now on the current state of esports journalism? Just very general.
I have to say that, I mean, there used to be times when there were 5 different people writing with an actual clue about esports and writing, and with a voice and writing about that. these days esports journalism doesn't really exist the way it used to exist, because people think it's about writing news, posting news, and updating scores, which it isn't. It's actually about, that's the bread and butter, yes, but the jam and the cherry and the cake is actually delivering original content, which is interviews, proper articles, proper previews for tournaments, sucking the story out of a tournament, picking an angle and illustrating a tournament in a certain light to make it more interesting to follow, things like that, and writing actually opinion pieces and columns, and putting the organizers today in check. So if there's a company out there that is doing something that's theoretically damaging to esports because, I don't know, they're burning money and they're affecting other companies in a bad way or whatever it is, there should be somewhere out there in the community just, lambasting that company for doing the wrong thing or things like that. And I don't see people that have enough voice, character, charisma, or courage to do that these days, and it's very, very regrettable, because I believe that's a very important role of the press to actually to be this solution in the community, to protect the community maybe from some of the bad influences, or at least raise important questions that the community should talk about. I don't see many people doing that these days.
Who do you feel is doing the best job?
To be honest, I would do people injustice if I mentioned a particular person, simply because I don't follow everything, and I don't have the time to follow everything. I have to say I really enjoy Slasher's work at Live on 3 with DJ Wheat. It's an interesting show. I watched, honestly, a couple of State of the Games. Literally a couple.
We weren't journalism at all. We were drama.
Well, it's a talk show. It falls under journalism, I guess. Yeah. Right? To be honest, I really enjoy Real Talk. And this is not brown nosing or whatever. I really find the level of your show very, very high, and I really enjoy it. But in terms of this truth seeking, which is something which is important to me, there are not many people that I'm aware of that do that. For example, Team Liquid does a phenomenal job with score updates and coverage. So the rudimentary stuff, but they choose to be very, very neutral to everyone. So if there's a company that doesn't do things the right way, they don't really point it out as harshly as they theoretically would be completely entitled to. And another thing regrettable in this world is that, I'm not going to name names, I don't want to sound like I'm criticizing anyone in particular, any company or any person, but and by the way, most of your guesses, if your people in the community, Reddit and stuff, most of your guesses will not be 100% correct, but we have all these shows that create opinion and websites that create opinion, and the people that are involved with these shows, they have clear agendas. If not to, even if they don't criticize one party or another, they certainly aren't able to criticize or shed how do I say this, pot questions, or like really valid, really interesting questions around entities that they themselves are affiliated with, which is a major conflict of interest, and I don't like that. But at the same time, there's nobody else that does these types of shows, and I honestly believe that if there's a good show done by completely neutral people that are allowed to say anything they want about anyone they want, they would beat shows and websites and other entities that keep quiet about certain stuff and talk about other stuff, if you know what I mean. that's regrettable.
It kind of feels, and you can tell me if you agree with this or not, but it feels like we're in this weird transition period where everyone that was in esports in the past 4 or 5 years is either with a company or with a league, and the people that haven't are kind of either in the middle where they're somewhat with the company. They do contracting work, they do work for a lot of these companies, so they can't criticize them. But it feels like in this day and age of esports that you actually can't be a journalist, because if you are, you won't have a job. You can't actually make a living. Otherwise, you just burn so many bridges because people are so, companies, not people, are so they get very upset if you piss them off, and they're very fickle and they won't go back on that. Do you feel the same kind of way? I mean, I look at Patrick Chobo Peon, who in my opinion is probably one of the top ones, as well as Slasher, and he worked for MLG. He's kind of broken that tie now, but at the same time he's with GameSpot. GameSpot has ties with everyone now, so it's a very weird state, I think, for journalism, and I don't think we'll have this true version. You mentioned truth finding, which is kind of at least in my knowledge of it, is the basis of journalism, and you can't have that right now in the scene. Do you agree with that?
Well, there are a couple of factors. Let's see how this began. All the communities that in the beginning, when let's say 10 years ago, esports was kind of launched with games like Quake, Counter-Strike, let's say Warcraft 3 and things like that. StarCraft, Brood War in the beginning as well. And all these people that work in the industry today, most of them actually started in that era.
Right.
But in the beginning, not many people were actually able to make a living out of esports. So if you were competent and a big esports fan, you were probably way better off actually finding a job outside of the industry, because being a journalist in esports would pay you, let's say, €350 a month. I'm making this up, by the way. But if you were a journalist in a Norwegian newspaper, you would make, with the same skill set, €3,000 a month. So anybody with a skill set and with an actual degree in something, they would leave the industry and get jobs elsewhere, which left the very few people that work in the industry. Those are the few competent people that manage to be lucky enough to land a job that could where they could earn a living. And because of the age of all these communities, there's no new people coming up and filling these roles after, let's say, somebody steps up and works for a company and is no longer able to, write independent journalism stuff. So that's one aspect of it. Another aspect of the journalism stuff is it's very difficult for anyone to begin, because obviously if you don't have experience as a journalist, in my opinion, then you start off with writing news and stuff. But what good is news these days with all these crowdsourcing websites where you get all of your news from Reddit and Twitter and then maybe Team Liquid, and you're informed? There's no way that anybody could justify doing this and spending half of the day doing this esports thing by writing news if it goes to Reddit and takes all the traffic away from your website anyway. There's no way to justify it. But I do believe that if there's anybody with a voice, with an interesting topic, that person could, interesting topic and an interesting opinion about the topic, that person could benefit a great deal, because there's nobody else like that, and you would be absolutely unique if you did that.
What do you watch a lot of Live on 3, and Scott, I know you're going to be pissed at me for bringing this up, but the past couple of episodes, this idea of sources, specifically with Slasher, and kind of pertaining to the whole stuff, the Stefano acquisition by EG. How do you what are your thoughts weighing in on the situation that occurred and the whole idea of sources right now in the industry?
Actually, I missed a couple of the Live on 3s which you're referring to, but I can probably infer what the deal is. In general, I think it comes down to credibility of the author. if it's somebody, Johnny357 Reddit account that writes something, then you should really take it with a grain of salt. But if it's somebody that, for example, you're connected to many players, you have a track record, you're a reliable guy, you have a reputation. If you write something like, "Hey, Stefano's going to EG," I'm going to believe you. I don't care what your sources are. I trust you. So it's a matter of trust for the author, I think. And granted, we don't have too many people in the industry that are willing to go out and spread rumors and say, "I have really good sources. I'm not going to burn them, but you have to believe me. Stefano's going to EG," stuff like that. So, it's part of journalism, right?
Right.
Simple as that. I mean, the problem is that there are not many people that are able to deliver it at a very high standard where they would be credible and they would have a reputation where you would naturally believe them. So I have to say they could potentially damage one company or another in not a very significant way, but still they could.
Now, we are going to move on to IEM, but I do want to kind of throw out to the community, if you're watching this on YouTube and the VOD, let me know what you guys think in the comments. I'd be very interested to see, and also on Reddit, what you guys think about the whole journalism in esports, because I think it's a reoccurring theme that is always brought up, but the only people really weighing in on it are figureheads. So I want to know what the community thinks. But moving right along, IEM. How did you get into that position at IEM? You mentioned that SK Gaming, when you joined, you said, well, a year from now, if ESL asked me to come work for them, I'm going to do it. What was that like for you, kind of going to work for them? Was that kind of an end game for you, in a sense?
Actually, I never had, if you're talking about goals and stuff, I never really set goals for myself, like big proper goals for myself. I just, at any given day, and that's something I apply to pretty much everything I do the best you can do at any given day and don't think about what's going to happen, because if you do your best, it's going to happen anyway if it's supposed to. It's something that you should apply if you're competing at anything. You can only control so much. You can only control your own performance. So, and I applied it to my judo performance. Do the best I could do. I applied it to my gaming performance. I didn't worry about the opponent being amazingly good or anything. I just focused on myself doing the best I can do, and what's out of my control is the level of my opponent. So whatever the result was, I would take it. Same with Intel Extreme Masters. I do the best I can do with it within the budget, and where it gets us, it gets us. I'm not interested in being better than company A or company B or looking at them or whatever. I'm interested in being the best I can be. So I didn't have any real long-term goals, and I still don't have any real long-term goals as regards jobs or anything. I just want to be the best I can be today. And that's a pretty long soliloquy before I actually got to the point of your question, but I got an offer from ESL, and they didn't really know where to put me. I was talking to the CEO, Ralph, and I told him, look, maybe we can do, international stuff like Intel Extreme Masters. I have a journalistic background. I maybe could help you a little bit with your story, because you have a fantastic event. It's well organized and it's tip-top. I've been to a couple, but the story doesn't seem to be, the buzz around it doesn't seem to be in proportion to what the event deserves to have. And he said, yeah, why not? Why don't you help out the product manager of the Intel Extreme Masters, who was Wolf Franke, who was doing that good job? And I said, yeah, why not? Because I got along with Wolf quite well. But actually, Wolf quit because of university, and I just stepped in, and with a relatively short transition period where Wolf's assistant was the co-product manager for Intel Extreme Masters, I just inherited the product. So this is pretty much what happened.
What was the job like starting out? Were you overwhelmed at first? Did you have to kind of learn a different trade set than you had been using your entire esports career, or did you just fit right in and go straight to work?
In some aspects, one part of your question is true. I mean, I would say yes to. In others, I would say, not at all. What I didn't know how to do until ESL actually is how to work in a big company. I worked in teams of maybe 2 people, 3 people prior to everything I did. Prior to ESL, everything I did was I was my own island, kind of. I delivered content whenever I pleased, always or almost always on time, but I worked whenever I pleased and things like that. And I go to a company where I wake up at a certain time, and I go to departments where people, where you need to give people heads up before you want something from them, when you need to, manage your time and learn to communicate in order for the entire company to function as a cohesive unit to carry out so that there's a certain result. And then on top of working in a company of 120 people or so, you actually work with entities like sponsors, with other agencies, with venues. They all have their different processes and things like that. And it's just been a gradual process where I would ease into it, and I'm super grateful that the ESL team overall has been good enough to for my flaws not to be so evident. That I stayed in the job and I eased into it, and I'm kind of doing okay these days. But management is something I'm still learning. I can't say I'm a fantastic manager, but management is something I've only began to understand at ESL.
Were there any big problems, and that can range pretty much to anything, at the company that you had to fix before you really kind of got into your stride? Or was it all pretty much kind of laid out for you?
Well, it was laid out for me, and in the beginning I was focused on not spoiling anything, not destroying anything. Actually, that was my main focus. But in general, when it comes to management, and I digress again a little bit, there are two parts to a management job. Part A, which is the majority of the job, is constantly fixing fucking problems. And part B of the job is attempting furiously to minimize part A. That's pretty much management for you. And the surprising thing is actually dealing with the likelihood of failure in management, not in management, in managing a big project like Intel Extreme Masters. I mean, so often I was this close to something completely not working, this close to a fiasco, things not working.
Do you have any examples for that? At least that you can talk about?
For example, Dubai tournament, Quake Live. Somebody at ESL actually made a mistake and did not file in the proper paperwork for the Russian player Cooler to get a visa into Dubai. And I found out in Dubai, and Cooler is like the MC of Quake Live. Or actually, sorry, the other way around. MC is like the Cooler of StarCraft 2.
Right. Exactly.
To give Cooler justice, Cooler is the original bad boy of esports. And I spent an entire day running around offices at an official Emirates holiday, running around offices at an airport, lying out of my ass where I had to, sneaking in wherever I could, figuring out how the hell to get Cooler into the event. And the solution was, at the end of the day, after so and so many lies, and I had to be like the motherfucking James Bond, and one man Ocean's 11. Honestly, we got Cooler a transit visa into Dubai. That was the only kind of visa he was able to get at the time frame. And actually, Mousesports, his team, who were fantastically obliging in this case, bought Cooler a flight from Moscow to Dubai to Thailand. And Cooler was allowed to stay 72 hours in Dubai and play the tournament.
Wow. Wow.
On a transit visa. And you have to get used to, if you want to run big esports events, and I'm pretty sure you have stories to tell on the MLG side of things.
Absolutely.
When he went this close to fucked up beyond repair, you actually begin to ignore these things which stress you out in the beginning. Oh shit, Caesar's not gonna happen, or whatever it is. You get completely immune to this type of stuff, and you begin to realize that almost nothing is impossible, and there's just solutions out there, and you need to be very thick-skinned. You need to not stress out about things, and you just need to go out there and fix shit. As I said, management is mostly about fixing shit.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
Wani, I am so sorry that we almost had you sent back to Korea one time on my behalf. That's all I'll say. that is.
No, hold on. I'm giving you scoops and stuff now. Time for you to share.
So I don't know, Adam Apicella, I apologize if you're watching, but what event was this at? I think this was in Columbus. I get a call from a number. I don't know who it is. I pick it up, and American guy answers the phone and say hello, and he goes, "Hi, I'm from the office of not immigration. So when you come in from another country and you get stuck at the airport, what's office do you have to go through?" I'm being a complete idiot right now.
Customs?
Yes, I'm from Customs. I have with me a Sungwon Kim. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, I don't. He's very American. He says it completely wrong, and I'm like, well, I don't know who that is. I was like, yeah, I'm sorry. Do you mean Wani? And then you hear him kind of take. Is your name? Is your name Wani? And he's like, yes. And he comes like, yes, Wani. I was like, oh yeah. I know Wani for us. He's working here this weekend. And he goes, he's working for you. I'm like, yeah. No, he's one of our translator. He's working for us. He's like, oh, well, are you paying him? And I'm like, yeah, no, because here's a U.S. official talking to me on the phone. I'm just being as honest as possible because I don't know what's going on. I'm a complete idiot. And long story short, or I completely messed that word up, but basically what happened was a couple hours later, they weren't going to let Wani in. And we had to have some people get on the phone, and we got Wani to that event. That's all I'll say. That was a very interesting conversation that I got to listen in, and he was pissed because he was basically stuck in the airport for a good hour or so in this tiny little office, and he didn't know if he was going to be sent to Canada and then be sent back to Korea after this 14-hour flight or what was going on. But that was the tournament that we almost didn't have a translator at. And Adam Apicella, I apologize if you're upset for me telling that story, but. Anyways.
Yeah, there's lots of these. There's lots of these stories.
Yeah. There are probably a lot of these stories that the public will never know about. But regardless, moving on. You've always really been an FPS guy in my eyes, specifically kind of with Quake Live, and I think that maybe stems from running Quake Live events for so long at IEM. You had to let Quake go as a title on the circuit, and that same year you ended up adding League of Legends. How hard of a decision was that for you to make, and was that kind of all on you? Was it more of a company decision? And also, this was really kind of the nail in the coffin for Quake Live as a game. Was that added into the decision? Was that kind of really, really hard for you to make at the end of the day?
Well, it was on an emotional level when I had lots of friends and, players like some players who I had known since they were 15, and they were flying for the first time ever across the Atlantic and completely jet lagged coming into a New York City event, beating Fatality with all the jet lag and not even smiling afterwards because like it was no big deal. Yeah, I'm talking about Avek here, and I've got a history with most of the top Quake players. It was difficult to take that away from them on an emotional level, but let me just tell you one thing. If one guy is ever in a position where he pulls the plug and the entire game is dead, then the game has been dead before he pulled the plug already.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it is, because how many times was the plug pulled on Counter-Strike before 2004, 2005, 2006, 7, 8, and it kept on going strong until recently where I pulled the plug. And Counter-Strike survived for such a long time, despite people's expectations. And one guy can't kill a game. It's as simple as that. Warcraft 3, any game out there, you can't really kill a game if you're one guy. It's up to the community, to sustain itself at the end of the day. All we can do is help magnify it. All we can do is help make it bigger. But good example on the other side of things, Painkiller with the CPL. It was a game with $1 million prize purse in the entire season in one circuit of tournaments, and a total of maybe the proverbial 17 players played it. They couldn't build a community, and the same way one company cannot kill a community unless it's a publisher of the game where they decide to pull the plug, in which case it's different. So from a logical point of view, when you detach yourself from all the emotions, it was not difficult to remove Quake Live from Intel Extreme Masters. It was just the right time. I added Quake Live not because we would get amazing numbers, but because it would add a certain level of cool to Intel Extreme Masters as a brand, which I thought we needed. No disrespect to any World of Warcraft fans, but it never had a universally gaming cool reputation and vibe around it. Mm-hmm. And if you watch the South Park episode, I think you know what the stereotype is.
Right.
So, but ever since StarCraft 2 came out, it removed the need for Quake Live to be in Intel Extreme Masters, to have this easily understood, really cool one-on-one game where people could really easily relate to it, and where it would kind of carry the reputation for Intel Extreme Masters, if you know what I mean. So it was a reputation thing, and then it became a resource thing, because we typically had at the time one stage at Intel Extreme Masters, and I don't believe in serving 1/3 of what you could serve to the people. If you have a Comic-Con event and you split the stage time between Counter-Strike, StarCraft 2 and Quake Live, then actually the people that go there for Quake Live are entertained 1/3 of the time, and so are the StarCraft 2 people, and so are the Counter-Strike people. So at the end of the day, all the communities that you're trying to serve are more pissed off than happy with the event, right? So I didn't want to do that to the communities, and I thought we would do better off with a better focus. So this is why we removed Quake Live, and League of Legends is actually unrelated to the removal of Quake Live, where League of Legends, not many people know that, but before League of Legends was added to Intel Extreme Masters, we put it through our amateur competitions, Go for League of Legends Cups, which became the single largest cup in all of esports, one-day cup, where we filled a 1,000 team bracket at the peak. ESL Major Series, which is kind of like an online version of Intel Extreme Masters in Europe. Majorly popular there, and you know, the game just didn't give us any choice.
Mm-hmm.
And the publisher, as you know, Riot Games, supports the hell out of the game as an esport, in the sense that, you know, whenever you play the game, League of Legends, when there is an Intel Extreme Masters event going on or any other big esports event going on, there's a big frigging thing on your screen that says, hey, this event's going on, click here, it will take you to the stream to watch it.
Right.
And that makes a humongous difference, that type of support. So the game actually left us no choice but to add it to Intel Extreme Masters, and we were really, really happy to with the effects, actually.
What is the general process like when it comes to choosing these titles? I mean, does the company kind of get in a room and sit there and deliberate over the course of a day, or is it a longer process than that? I mean, I know kind of what MLG's aspect is to some degree, but at the same time, we've never really gone outside of the normal. You guys, as far as I know, you were the first to adopt League of Legends at this level, correct? Onto your scene?
Yep, because we're smart.
So what was that process like?
I'm kidding. We look at games, which games do well in the ESL systems. I mean, ESL is a huge gaming network with like 4 million accounts or something, where people play on a consistent basis, and you know, we look at which games are popular in ESL, and with the help of Riot and Riot's promotion of the tournaments that we put up, League of Legends turned out to be extremely successful in the ESL networks, which provided us with enough completely objective data to predict that it would do well in Intel Extreme Masters. Most of it is about getting objective data, unless you have your ear to the ground and you have a really good hunch. Then it becomes to just gathering good data and figuring out which game fits. But there's a cap, there's a limit on how many games we can fit into Intel Extreme Masters. Not every event has got so much floor space for us. Sometimes we only have one stage and 50 PCs. Sometimes we have 3 stages and 150 PCs, where we can run several tournaments for several games. But the smaller events, for example, the Comic-Con Intel Extreme Masters, or the one we were supposed to have in Shanghai, they have a physical cap of how many games they can fit. So we need to really carefully pick and choose, and we choose the games which we have data for that they will yield a certain good result. And I believe in consistency. So if you ask me why we haven't switched games so much, because maybe Dota is a good choice compared to League of Legends, I like consistency personally, and I believe in consistency. And so long as League of Legends is working, I see very good reasons to keep it in Intel Extreme Masters.
I think that you kind of know me, or at least knew me when I first started out from the WoW scene. Do you see any comparisons from League of Legends to World of Warcraft, or in terms of the reason that it's so big, the reason that we see it at all these events is what I'm getting at? Nothing to correlate the game to one another.
Well, it's, I mean, the job of any, at the end of the day, how does a company like ESL or any other company that hosts tournaments get money or continue to do business? We provide access to a very large audience, to companies that search contact with that type of audience, right? And which is gamers. And basically, if you're able to say, hey, we had 267,000 people watching one match at the same time, that's a huge number, and that's a valuable number. So League of Legends, above all, delivers numbers to companies like ESL, but numbers alone, that that will not cut it. But League of Legends, if you go to the League of Legends Reddit, they know about the pro teams. They follow the pro teams. They do have a scene with proper professionals who are stars, who have their own followership and things like that. So there's very often a discussion, oh, this game is bad for esports, this game is good for esports, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. But at the end of the day, I keep repeating that, and if anybody follows me more closely, you'll just try to vomit right now, but I frigging hate baseball. I hate baseball. I think it's dumb. But does that give me the right to say that everybody that goes to the Yankee Stadium is wrong? It doesn't. I mean, just because I hate baseball doesn't make it a bad game. And I, as a guy who runs Intel Extreme Masters, I shouldn't look through my personal eyes at games, because then we would be playing Unreal Tournament in Intel Extreme Masters, and Counter-Strike would never have made it into Intel Extreme Masters, because back in the days, people from FPS games like Quake and Unreal Tournament would look down on Counter-Strike players. You need to look at hard facts. Does the game have a community? Does the game have a followership? Are there professional teams? Are these guys stars? Does the best team win in the long run consistently? And if all those points are a check, then the game is fit to be an esports title. I don't care if it's Angry Birds. I don't care if it's Halo. I don't care, whatever it is. If the game has a community of fans that are willing to follow it, just like any other game, and if the game provides a consistent winner, that means the game has enough depth to be a good esport. And that's all there is to it.
I think Sundance has actually said those exact words. Whether it was to me or whether it was public, I don't remember, but it seems pretty common for a lot of tournament people involved with the different leagues and tournaments to kind of have that feeling. So spending more time on League of Legends and kind of getting away from ESL for just a bit, they kind of got into, I guess, some hot water recently when the discussion of teams and exclusivity came up with regards to their own league. Do you have any opinions or thoughts? I guess working so closely with Riot, they're going to be maybe not your thoughts entirely. I guess I'll leave that up to you. But what do you think about that whole situation that occurred and the drama that came out of that?
What do you mean specifically? Could you please specify? What drama exactly?
The drama exactly was the idea that they were basically. I don't want to put words into what happened because I don't follow the drama too much. But it had to do with team exclusivity and the fact that they were trying to kind of keep teams from going outside of their league, I think is what it was. I feel very bad right now being so ignorant to it and asking a question about it. But
okay, so I more or less know what you mean.
Okay. Good, thank God.
I can only give a historical answer that there has never been a league in esports history that I know of that benefited from exclusivity. That's all I can say. But
okay.
This doesn't mean that whoever is trying to have an exclusive league and tie teams or players to exclusive contracts, this doesn't mean that whoever's trying is going to fail. It just seems to me that historically, and there are good reasons behind it, and I could talk about it for the next 7 hours, but there are good reasons why it's likely to yield results which are worse than an open system.
Okay. All right. I feel comfortable with that answer, only because I can't press it too much more, obviously knowing you work for ESL and whatnot. So kind of jumping back on that bandwagon. In terms of MOBAs, I think you've probably gotten asked this question just as much as I get asked if State of the Game's ever coming back. Dota 2 on the ESL circuit or on the IEM circuit, will we ever see that day? Will that ever occur? And when it comes to numbers, I think that to kind of give you an argument for that, I think the International just proved that the numbers are definitely there for Dota.
Mm-hmm. I'm not going to rule it out. And anyone that would throw rumors at my face that there is something in any contract written down that we're not allowed to use Dota. There is no such thing written anywhere on any piece of paper that I have ever seen. There are physical constraints for us, logistical constraints, that make it difficult for us to add another team game. I'm not going to rule it out, but until we pass the hurdle of a limited floor space, a limited number of stages and things like that, or figure out a good solution, could be next season, could be never, difficult to say. We're going to stick with probably 2 games in Intel Extreme Masters, if that's an answer. But there's nothing that I have against Dota. Actually, the CEO of Turtle is the biggest Dota nerd you'll ever see. And he gets to tell me what to do if he wants to. So, but there's nothing in Dota that would make me say this game will never be an Intel Extreme Masters. But if it will be, I can't tell you either. But just to address one issue that I had on Twitter, where people were actually pretty viciously attacking me for saying that, for defending League of Legends, that it does have depth. Mm-hmm. There was something Kenneget wrote comparing League of Legends. He didn't mention League of Legends, but it was quite obvious, comparing League of Legends to Angry Birds and Dota to chess. And I tried to defend League of Legends, that the game does have depth, because I honestly feel that, if you saw Rounders, the movie with Matt Damon, there's this quote where he says about poker players that why does the World Series of Poker have always, the same 5 guys in the finals? These guys have to be the luckiest guys in Vegas, right? To prove a point, it's a skill game because of the consistency. So there has to be enough of a skill ceiling in any game. If there's a team, for example, like M5 BenQ, which wins most tournaments it competes in. And you can talk about your subjective feelings. Hey, there is less micro, or the macro is easy in StarCraft 2, blah, 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 and it's not as good as Brood War, blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, there is enough skill in this game, and maybe some other skills which are less relevant in Brood War got more relevant in StarCraft 2, and the same with any other MOBA game or team FPS game or whatever. Skill shifts. It doesn't really, if you lose, let's say, if you lose the macro aspect, let's say in Warcraft 3, then the micro becomes more important, and there the skill ceiling rises. The only objective evidence to say that the game is deep or it isn't deep, or deep enough or not deep enough, is whether or not it's random, or because if there's a team that wins consistently, there must be the fucking luckiest team in the world. Or the game has enough depth. So that's kind of sorry for dealing with private Twitter business on Real Talk, but hey.
No, by all means, by all means. When Toby One was on, obviously a very passionate Dota 2 fanatic for I guess exactly what he is. He's always been very critical of Riot, and I don't know the quote exactly, but basically what he was saying was that Riot kind of bought their way into esports. And I want your opinion on this. Did Riot putting into money, you mentioned, of course, the support behind the game, and I think everyone's very familiar with Riot's support when it comes to League of Legends at these other events. Is that what made the game what it is today, or does the game kind of stand by itself among other esport titles?
To be honest, I think the key aspect here was the fact that they were the only company, or the first company, to really manage to break the boundary between the actual game and the community of players that play the game and the esports side of the game. Because, I mean, if you played Counter-Strike, for example, and you were a very casual player and you played 6 hours a day every single day, it would still take a miracle for you to find out about Counter-Strike tournaments happening, Intel Extreme Masters or any other big tournament with tons of money. There's like, you need to randomly somehow find a community that follows the game and things like that. That's the single biggest problem in esports, in my opinion, that the community of the game has no idea that there exists a world where actually people compete for money or compete for fun on a ladder somewhere. So, in my opinion, the biggest thing that Riot has done positive for League of Legends is the fact that they have managed to actually make the entire community aware of this esports world. I mean, without them, we wouldn't have got 1,000 teams playing in a one-day cup, for example, or we wouldn't have had records broken on the streaming, which, you know, 267,000 people watching a single match is quite a lot. So, from that sense, and I think this would have been achievable without Riot sponsoring so much money. So from that perspective, League of Legends has earned its spot among other tournament games. But I would agree with you, if that's actually your own thought, that the money that Riot has put into tournaments actually built an impression that they bought into it, but that's actually detracting from the main thing which I have mentioned.
Right.
I think the game would have succeeded with or without Riot's $5 million, which, by the way, I find both by Valve and by Riot relatively unwise how they allocate their prize money.
Kind of going along with what you just said, Valve and Riot putting so much money in, are they? It feels like let me start over. The StarCraft 2 community feels, at least the way that I look at it, feels somewhat maybe betrayed or confused as to why Blizzard isn't throwing that much money into it, that much marketing money. Sure, they're doing the WCS. That's kind of the answer that a lot of people give to that argument. But is Riot doing it right, and Valve doing it right by putting that much money into the game? Should Blizzard be kind of following suit in the future, or do you think they will in the future?
I don't think they have to. I don't think Valve has to. I don't think Riot has to. I think the ESLs of this world, or the MLGs of this world, or the DreamHacks of this world would be perfectly happy to host tournaments and grow this organically. Prize money obviously speeds things up. It's the manner in which companies like Valve and Riot spend their money is what sometimes what could be well improved. I'll give you an example.
Sure.
If you want to have an ecosystem with lots of teams competing and with lots of superstars, you generally want to give, and this is going to be a slight critique of Blizzard as well, you generally want to give players 365 days of an excuse to practice. If you provide one tournament in a year with $1 million prize money, $2 million, $5 million, or whatever, you are not going to have as many tournaments, as many professional teams as you would if you placed 50% of that money spread out across the year. Why? Because the EGs of this world and the SK Gamings of this world, do they really want to finance a top Dota team or a top League of Legends team or a top whatever team for a once-a-year chance for glory? Do they really want to spend all this money around the whole calendar for a once-in-a-year chance to win some really big money and get really big media attention, where one player getting a diarrhea could spoil the entire year of investment. I mean, that stuff is expensive to keep up an entire team. Any intelligent team, if there's a game out there with a $1 million prize purse for one tournament in a year, and a game out there with $50,000 tournaments spread across the year, which, you know, one game has double the prize money of the other in one event, any intelligent team will go for the game which has many events and allows you a consistent return of investment around the clock. So actually putting so much prize money into one tournament is just unwise, I have to say, because what you need to do is, and any intelligent player, would you really, if you're intelligent and you're fighting for a really good college degree that can make you a wealthy businessman along the road, would you really quit all that to become a professional player in any game because you have one chance per year to win $500,000? Would you quit the entire year for something like that? No, probably not. If you're really smart, probably not. The odds are against you. So, and it's a little bit, I'd have to say, and this is the criticism, and I've said it to all the Riot people that I have met, that I don't think that putting so much prize money into one tournament, this goes for both Valve and for Riot, putting so much money into one single tournament is just unwise, and the only purpose it serves is to get mainstream attention. But you can probably spend that million and get the mainstream attention somehow more cost efficiently, I think, personally. And I might get in trouble for saying that out in the public, by the way, but screw that. When it comes to Blizzard, also, WCS is a... And by the way, just the fact that we do have these tournaments is fantastic. All I'm saying is that you could spend the money more cost effectively. You can spend the same money with a bigger benefit for your ecosystem, which you're trying to get to grow. And I have to say, for Blizzard as well, a little bit, WCS is a fantastic tournament series, but at the end of the day, all it does for the guy who's number 4 in Germany, number 5 in Germany, number 6 in Germany, it provides this guy 2 weeks of an excuse to practice as much as Hassuops and Zoka does in Germany. 2 weeks of an excuse is not enough to raise the level of the guys from the background to challenge the top guys. So while it's phenomenal that there is this entire tournament, I could see ways where Blizzard could maybe even better spend that money that they're spending on WCS. But let me restate again, so I'm not misunderstood, the fact that there is the international for Dota with $2 million prize money, the fact that Riot's giving $5 million prize money altogether for League of Legends, and the fact that there is the World Championship Series for StarCraft 2. All of these things are 2 thumbs way up. It's just me that would spend this money differently.
Is this idea of, or not the idea, is this concentration and focus of, I mean, we just basically spent probably the better half of 20 minutes talking about money. And is the idea of money and the size of it in all these tournaments, should that really be the focus at the end of the day right now in esports? Because it feels like all these tournaments are kind of being compared by everyone else that's digesting the content, and they're not watching the content, they're not watching the production value, they're looking at the money at the end of the day. Should consumers kind of focus on other aspects of esports, or is the money kind of the one thing to focus on from here on out?
I guess it's there are many ways to achieve what you want to achieve as a tournament organizer. For example, I fought long and hard to try to produce something, and there's only so much you can do, and the rest is just hoping for the best. Try to achieve an effect where players that compete in Intellect Stream Masters care about the tournament so much that money wouldn't matter. I mean, the money has to be good, but there are so many other aspects. Build the prestige, build the desire in them to win. My proudest moment ever that I've had, and I had a couple of proud moments. One of them was, for example, when I was talking to MMA last Intellect Stream Masters World Championship, and I told them about the trophy, and I said, if you win the Intellect Stream Masters trophy, the next Intellect Stream Masters trophy will have your name engraved on it, and every single champion, 1 year from now, 5 years from now, 15 years from now, when they receive this trophy, your name will be on it. And I saw the look in MMA's eyes, and he was like, holy shit, I want to have this. I want my name on this. And my proudest moment ever with Intellect Stream Masters is actually a semi-final of Team FX versus SK Gaming in Counter-Strike a couple of years ago, where there was a super amazingly epic game, and the Polish team, after beating SK Gaming, who were the tournament favorites, at least for me, beating them in the semi-final in a super nail-biter after being down, all these grown-up guys who had won titles before in their lifetime, like big titles, World Cyber Games, ESWC titles and things like that, they broke out crying. They cried. It obviously it was way more than just Intellect Stream Masters, but the fact that winning a semi-final of my tournament can mean so much to a guy who's 24 and has won pretty much everything in the business, and that guy's crying, and his opponent is kneeling on the floor, like, with his double face palming in total despair. That's what you want to achieve if you ever run esports tournaments. Mm-hmm. And money alone will not do it. Money is the easiest and I'd say the cheapest, quote unquote, way to get relevance to your tournament, but it's certainly not the only one. And we'll see. I mean, there's many ways of building prestige, and I think in general we're talking about prestige, and money is not the only factor where that makes players want to win certain events over others. I mean, I'm pretty sure if there would come up a tournament which would double GSL's prize money, in the first 2 seasons it wouldn't be more prestigious than GSL, right? Right. It's just the history, all the nesties, all the Artosis freaking out and Tasters freaking out moments, and Fruit Dealer, all this legacy. That's the magic, and you want to build the magic for your tournament brand, and it's just so awesomely gratifying if you ever see a player that would care so much about your event that they would put their heart in it, not because you give them money at the end of the day, but because there is something way more than that, and it's just beautiful.
I do need to probably give credit where credit is due. You mentioned the trophy and the fact that the winner's name go on there. While at MLG, that was probably the one thing to be critical of MLG, that when you win an MLG, the trophy it's always been kind of changing in a sense that there is no prestige. There's prestige to it, but it's, I've won an MLG. It's not a thing or an item that you obtain. It's not a ring or anything like that. And I think that could be said for a lot of organizations outside of MLG, not to be too critical of an ex-employer. IGN or IPL, as far as I know, they don't have kind of a reoccurring thing like that. To call Valve out for doing good things, the ring that I saw for the International, that was actually awesome, and it was surprising to me how much of an impact that had, kind of seeing that. And I hope that a lot of other people kind of shared that. But anyways, the show is about you. It's not about what I think. So in terms of general esports, you're always a FPS fan, competitive FPS fan. 1.6 and Quake, they finally have died. They've gone the way of the dinosaurs. Is CSGO the one to kind of take the reins? Is it Shoot Mania? Is there a competitive FPS that can take the reins of those?
I honestly cannot tell you. My gut feeling says that we need something bigger than we have had before, and it's difficult to compete really with the legacy of Counter-Strike. I said it on a Fnatic podcast earlier. I think, was it this week? This week or last week? I said it on a Fnatic podcast that I think Valve intended for CSGO to be actually bigger than CS 1.6, and you cannot achieve that if you try to copy CS 1.6 into CSGO, because then you're appealing to the 1.6 community and pretty much only to the 1.6 community, and out of the 1.6 community, maybe if you do your job well, 80% will switch to CSGO. So whatever you do, if you do it perfectly, you'll only end up with 80% of what you wanted to have in the first place. So they had to attempt to somehow make sure that the source community would like it, that the 1.6 community would like it, and that a ton of new people would like it, and at the same time, make money and stuff. And that's an extremely difficult and challenging thing to do, and to be honest, I haven't paid enough attention to CSGO to actually have an opinion where I could swear to it and say, hey, I give my right hand that this and this would happen. But right now it doesn't seem like CSGO is bigger than what Valve may have wanted, but I think it will get there. But I don't know if it's going to be one of these absolutely amazingly groundbreaking esports titles that they will write in history books about. If anybody wants to write an esports history book, Chobapion probably.
Exactly.
When it comes to Shoot Mania, I don't have enough data, to be honest. I played the game once in the one-on-one mode, and I don't think that particular mode is the mode, but the benefit to Shoot Mania is that they have this modding availability, which is which gives a lot of potential, and there could be somewhere a guy in a basement that will design such an epic game based on Shoot Mania that millions and millions of people will play it. But to be honest with you, I think that the next big FPS game that will conquer esports is going to be a free-to-play game, because that allows an access to a ton of people to play the game. This something I think you guys talked about on State of the Game one day. Is my blog where I wrote that the business model for League of Legends is better for esports than StarCraft 2. I mean, it's an inherent esports problem. Who these days buys Brood War? Nobody buys Brood War. So how is Brood War as an esport supposed to survive if you don't have any new players coming in? It's not possible. And as long as the games we play as an esport have the model where you have to buy it on the shelf, we will keep having this problem where it's going to blossom for a certain period of time. And unless it hits absolute mainstream, like televised leagues and everything, people will stop coming into the scene, because nobody will be buying the game, because the game will be old. So you need to have a free-to-play game in order to achieve sustainability, to sustain the player base, to drive new players into the scene, and to make sure that Stefano's knocked off of his perch by an unknown 17-year-old from Indonesia while Stefano's still in his prime, not because Stefano quit and there's another guy, the second best is now the first best. I mean, so to be honest, I don't see a groundbreaking FPS title, because I think esports as a whole has changed in a sense that the general model of how you release the game really affects the longevity and the relevance of the game as an esports title.
Well, we will have to wait and see, and I'm sure Slasher will be there right next to us waiting and watching as well. So I always post on Reddit before I go and do an episode, because a lot of the questions and comments are very thought-provoking. And I wanted to give special shout-out to, it's either Andy's or Andis42. He was wanting to know, and to kind of peel back the curtain a little bit, when you go and pitch, or when ESL goes and pitch to companies for sponsorships, what are some of the reasons that you say or use that are kind of worthwhile for the company to invest in, and what are those meetings usually like for the common everyday esports consumer to know about?
So, what I tell potential sponsors, and it's 100% true, is that if they have a product which is aimed at gamers, they are trying to sell a product to a group of people who is extremely web savvy and is able to basically build a bubble around themselves, protecting them from any kind of marketing and, advertising, all sorts of marketing, advertising, whatever. They don't watch TV. They have their ads turned off in Chrome or Firefox. They download their own movies on demand. There's pretty much it's a target group of an extremely difficult access. You know what I'm talking about, because you know how to protect yourself from marketing yourself, right? Mm-hmm. And pretty much everybody that watches Real Talk will be able to find ways to protect themselves from marketing. And it so happens that these gamers, they happen to be this guy in the family or this guy in the neighborhood that every single one will go to ask, hey, I want to buy a new mouse, I want to buy a new game, I want to buy a new processor. What do I get? This is the guy that influences on average probably 4 people in the in the nearest vicinity. There are tech choices of 4 different people in the vicinity. So it's a highly influential target group. I mean, how many people walk up to you and ask you, hey, what PC hardware should I get? What internet connection should I get? Yeah. You probably get these questions all the time, right?
Every day, yeah. Every day on the stream. Yeah. I've got all the hardware and everything listed right below, actually, here on Twitch for that very reason. So,
top gamers and hardcore gamers, anybody that watches a StarCraft broadcast or a League of Legends broadcast will know how to deal with internet, and will probably the guy in the family that the rest of the family goes to and asks him or her about what to get as a laptop, what to get as a cell phone, etc. And it's so fortunate that we happen to be this particular guys that the company wants to target. We happen to be his favorite pastime. So by aligning with a company like ours, basically that company gains access to a guy who otherwise sits in a bunker, and it's impossible to to access this guy in his free time. Simple as that. I mean, that's more or less what it looks like. And sales meetings, seduction.
Seduction.
You try to seduce the shit out of them.
Oh God, you should record one of those or something. Maybe one day. We'll have to see what Carmac seduction looks like on a lot of these sponsors. Talking more general now. This weekend in Valencia, Spain, we have DreamHack going on. And the unique part of it is this esports congress that is being held. It's got pretty much everyone at the tip-top level of an organization or a team in attendance. In fact, I believe ESL's CEO is going to be there. Sundance will be there. Robert's going to be there from DreamHack. Alex, everyone's going to be there.
I was supposed to be there.
You were supposed to. I was gonna wonder. I was gonna ask.
I
What?
had to cancel because of China.
Oh, and now you're not going.
And then China got cancelled. So.
Oh man. Well, first off, how upset are you about that?
Well, there's going to be a Liverpool versus Manchester United game on Sunday, so at least I'm going to get to watch that as a Liverpool fan. But yeah, of course, I'm not happy. First of all, that China got cancelled. Second, I would, as a nerd, and I really am a nerd, and I'm super happy to watch events other than mine because I can't watch my events. I'm working.
Yeah.
I'm super happy I get to watch events other than mine that are well produced and that I can enjoy. And I was really, looking forward to going to Valencia, but unfortunately, happens.
What do you expect? What are you looking for to come out of this Congress? Because this is pretty much the first time something like this has ever happened in our industry, at least maybe on a more public scene. Maybe behind the scenes things have happened where people have gotten together, but what are you expecting to come out of this?
There were esports conferences in general before.
Right, but I guess you're referencing G8?
Cologne, I think. There was one in Cologne. There was an esports conference, but I guess it's I think it's more of a knowledge share. At the end of the day, what you really have to, and I say this with no bullshit, we're all competitors. We all want to be, the top dog there. I personally don't think anybody intelligent in this industry wants to have a monopoly, because there's no way you can satisfy the community and the needs of the industry with just one company. But that's besides the point. So yeah, besides the point, yeah. Whoever wants a monopoly is a fucking idiot. But leadership is what everybody wants, which means it's going to be very difficult for all of us to completely hold hands. But a knowledge share and some type of degree of agreement between all of these companies that work in esports and try to push esports forward. It's obviously very important, and it's obviously very productive that all of these guys sit down at one table and talk. And I do believe Dustin Browder is going to be there, and then maybe all of these guys that will be there can gang up on him and and get him to change some stuff around StarCraft 2 that could work. For example, maybe here's an idea. Maybe, and I talked about this with Mark Olbers from Blizzard Europe and Testosis at a lunch in Cologne, or dinner actually, after Intel Extreme Masters. Why not make multiplayer StarCraft 2 free to play? I mean, you've got a really, really tiny percentage of people that actually play StarCraft 2 on Battle.net. So why not make it free to play and use the free to play multiplayer stuff as a marketing tool for the campaign, which you have to pay for? I mean, wouldn't that be very smart for esports and very smart for the campaign as well? Maybe, I don't know. But yeah, somebody should talk to Blizzard about that idea.
Do you know, is Riot going to have people in attendance? Do you know? I haven't looked at the full list.
To be honest, I was busy with some behind-the-scenes turmoil and the unfortunate cancellation of our China event. That I didn't really have enough free time to pay attention to it.
All right. Well,
I'm going to watch the event at the weekend, and I hope to enjoy it greatly.
Yeah, I do want to mention for those people that are interested in the event, it will be streamed live on Twitch. I don't know what channel, but you can bet your ass it'll probably be on the front page of Twitch. So just check in this weekend when that'll go down. Red Eye's actually hosting that. But moving along, kind of in the same vein, the idea of a centralized governing body has always been, it's been kicked around in esports, but it's never actually happened.
Fallacy.
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 Can you speak to that? Is this the Illuminati?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's. I was at a congress where I'm not sure if you're familiar with a certain lady called T.L. Taylor that writes. She's a sociologist that writes about video games and video game culture and internet culture. She organized with a couple of friends also very highly educated and intelligent, a congress in Copenhagen, which I was invited to. And I was sitting next to a guy who was trying to establish the Danish Esports Federation. And I've had a hard time not being relatively condescending to him, because what the hell are you trying to federate, if federate is a word? I mean, do you want to talk to gamers who are, all 15, 16 and don't know what, don't know anything about life? And do you want to talk to how are you going to join into one big federation, players of StarCraft 2, League of Legends, FIFA, soccer, Street Fighter, and whatever? I mean, it's just not realistic to expect that. There's no way you can actually physically accomplish that. It's unrealistic. That's one thing. And the second thing is you have no power. Why? Because if Blizzard, Riot, Valve, or whoever the hell else decides you're not hosting tournaments or you have no say, it's their intellectual property. You're not going to be able to do anything at all. So it's completely futile and completely useless. And I honestly think that the only governing body that we can have for a regulated esports ecosystem similar to, let's say, FIFA, would be the publisher themselves, because they own the intellectual property, and if they are intelligent enough and conscious of what the hell they are building with their esports game, then these guys should be the ones figuring out what's healthy in the long run for their game and enforce it with all the tournament organizers, players, teams, and so on and so forth. So their responsibility lies with the publishers, and the only realistic chance to actually make it happen so that globally there is something like a regulated system, it's only the publisher who can get things done.
I immediately thought of CPL and Severity when you brought up the fact that, without owning the rights and everything to it, were they ahead of their time with that? Is that a pipe dream for esports? Is that a dream for a company like an MLG or an ESL or an IPL to own the game?
Let me ask you this one question.
Okay.
Do you actually believe Severity was real?
No, not by any means. It was definitely an idea before it was a thing. But is that in game for esports? I mean, because you had it dead on in my eyes, where if the publisher always has control, they always have control, and there's nothing we can do about that in terms of the leagues. Is that something that, I don't know, 10, 15 years down the line, if we're still having esports and it's still going strong, is that something that should happen where a league owns the game?
I think it's I think just for the viewers out there that don't know, tournament organizers typically have a license from a publisher allowing them to run tournaments for the game. To be honest, I think it's it's way easier for a company like Blizzard to hire several people to build a governing body for all of esports than for a company like ESL to code a game. I mean, that's not our core competence. We would have to hire a team of coders that would create a game, publish it, and make it successful. Whereas a publisher, on the other hand, Riot, Blizzard, Valve, whoever, would have to hire initially maybe 4 people that don't really need a particular skill set aside of being intelligent and understanding sports structures. So from that perspective, I think it still should lie with the publisher. But unfortunately, our main publishers, and I speak about every single one of the publishers, they don't hire from within the esports industry and from within the esports ecosystem. They don't hire enough. They hire people who are intelligent, who are qualified, but not necessarily complete esports diehards and nerds. So what they end up doing most of the time, which is what you see all across the board in esports history and recently as well, that these very intelligent people that are qualified and competent but don't come from esports, they just apply real life models that exist and work for real life stuff like NBA or soccer, and they try to apply it relatively blindly to esports, and it doesn't work out as well as it should. So word of advice, if you work for a publisher, just go talk to your CEO, tell him to steal some people from within the industry, and these guys will actually do wonders for your game, and they will make sure the game flourishes as an esport.
There you go. Absolutely. So I'm kind of winding down on my end for questions. I do want to mention to the chat subscribers, if you guys have questions, go and prep them. We'll do a round of subscriber questions here at the end of this episode. So you have had your hand in a ton of different things within esports. Which of those are you most proud of?
I have to say that, I mean, I'm the type of guy who's got like this inherent need to, I guess, create content that other people love and enjoy. And whenever I succeed in it, I'm really, really happy. So every little instance where I manage to entertain people one way or another is bringing me joy. But again, I have to come back to that Counter-Strike match, that Counter-Strike semi-final, where I saw a group of people trying so hard at my tournament, or at our tournament, at ESL's tournament, one I was chiefly responsible for, and they were crying. It meant so much to me. It really meant so much to me. It was amazing. So that was my single proudest moment maybe in my entire life, or at least my professional life. But I'd like to, be able to, if I ever move on, I'd like to be able to say that I've left something behind that helped build a future for the next generation of esports people. I'd like to be able to say that about myself if I ever move on to another job or to another industry.
At the end of the day, once you've hopefully retired within this industry,
what the fuck do you mean hopefully retired?
I'm saying where the industry is...
What kind of future do you wish for me, JP? What the hell is this?
Where the industry is in a place where you can retire and watch instead of do everything. Where do you see the industry? I mean, what is in our future? Do you see it flourishing and becoming this mainstream thing, or are we already a mainstream entity, or what's the future?
I mean, I don't think anybody can tell you. I don't think anybody is intelligent enough to tell you that. Anyone that tells you that they know what's going to happen in 10 years with esports, I would consider an idiot. An idiot that doesn't know what the hell they're talking about. I mean, you saw recently with SOPA. SOPA pretty much kills online streaming as we know it today. And the online streaming as we know it today is 75% of success of the current esports industry, which means if there's a legislative bill that passes like that in the US, for instance, which is a large esports audience, boom, half of the companies no longer exist in esports. So how the hell can you try to predict a future in a business, in an environment that's so fragile and so volatile like esports? I mean, it's ridiculous, and it's really difficult to say. I mean, who knows what kind of controllers we're going to have in a couple of years that we'll play with. Maybe it's all going to be completely casual and nobody will be able to make money out of a proper hardcore game, and there's not going to be games to be played. I mean, can you completely rule it out? Would you give up your right arm on a bet that wagers that there's going to be hardcore games 10 years from now?
Yeah.
Probably not, right? So anybody that talks about the future of esports, really seriously, down to earth, without selling any bullshit, I think they're high, to be honest. If they're talking about the future of esports, they should talk about next year, maybe. But no more than that. I mean, hey, one year we don't have esports, the next year we have barcrafts. I mean, who would have predicted that? It's really very, very difficult to predict. But hopefully, if I ever, get to a place where I can, just chill and buy the HD pass to every league and just enjoy it with a glass of apple juice. Hopefully, hopefully it's big, it's entertaining, and hopefully people get recognized in the streets because it's big enough. But does it have to be big enough? No, as long as it's sustainable, as long as companies like ESL, MLG, GSL, and others can make money out of it, as long as the top players in the world can make at least a part-time living out of it. Why does it have to be mainstream? It doesn't, as long as the people that love it still love it and enjoy it. Do we really need to force our hobby onto other people? Not really, no, not so much. Would it be great if it was mainstream and if, JP McDaniel walks out to the supermarket and there's 12-year-old girls asking for his, autograph and a picture with him? That would be fantastic, but I don't think it's a goal that we should aspire to. We should aspire to be the best possible thing that we can be today, and things will happen on their own. I mean, that's just how it is. You shouldn't really aspire to be anywhere from that perspective. Just be whatever you can be, the best you can be, and then if it was meant to be for you to be on television every single day, if it was meant for Sundance to be assassinated because he made a call that one of the fans of Team EG didn't agree with, and somebody went up. Obviously, I don't wish him any harm, by the way. Just a random stupid example. I'm relatively juvenile like that, or you know what I mean. Sure, if it happens, it's fantastic. If it doesn't, no harm done, really. We shouldn't really think about these things. There is potential, yes. Can we be on television every day? Yes. Will it happen? Who the fuck knows?
I think that's a good place. I had one more question before the final one here of every real talk, but I think that's a good ending spot. So, Carmac, define success for me, using that as the definition of success. Do you find yourself to be successful?
Success is when you ask yourself the question, could I have done better? And when the answer is no, that's success. And on most days, I'm not successful.
All right. Well, subscribers, go ahead and start giving your questions. Red Eye actually had a question earlier, and I'm just going to go ahead and use it, even though I don't know if he wanted me to really ask it. But he wants to know, how does Carmac feel about IPL putting down the 3-year plan when you were talking about how no one can predict the future?
Well, I'm assuming they're going to adjust it at some point. I mean,
maybe it's already been adjusted.
So the thing is, obviously, you need to make plans. And you need to plan for the future. Obviously, it's completely obvious, and you need to predict the future as best you can when you create a business and when you work in a business. At the end of the day, there's going to be a suit somewhere along the chain who's going to expect to see a plan that's fairly reliable. It's completely natural. So you need to do the best you can to predict the future, but you have to face the fact that in this industry, at this stage, you cannot predict the future. I mean, as the SOPA example I've mentioned, boom, dead. Everyone is dead.
Yeah.
Let's assume someone crazy goes to one of the publishers and they decide that You know, nobody is allowed to run tournaments for their game except for this publisher. Boom! Suddenly, 50% of, you know, the esports business becomes, you know, held internally by a publisher. We don't know what's going to happen. One idiot in the publisher company could theoretically, you know, ruin everything, right? And the ESLs and IPLs and then GSLs of this world might lose business over that. So it's volatile. So, but yeah, we should plan as best we can, and I do also. So, you know, it's just that you need to adjust plans. One example I'll give, and I'm sorry for giving super long answers, is I honestly underappreciated the value of the commentator in the broadcast. I mean, at the end of the day, there is a large portion of the audience that's not really interested so much in players, but they're more interested in commentators. So they're going to watch any stream that has their favorite commentator commentating. And I underappreciated it. It partially comes down to the fact that players don't get enough coverage, and the journalism level in esports overall is not so great. So very few players attract enough attention to be a magnet for the viewers, and the commentators these days get the stories and the consistency in terms of the public limelight. But yeah, I'm supposed to be a smart guy in esports. I'm supposed to have a big track record, and I went really wrong on this one. So, you know, we can predict as best we can, but we can never really predict it correctly, I think.
You still had League of Legends first, Carmac. Don't ever let anyone take that from you. Another question. Dignitas's very own Odie wants to know why Liverpool. Why Liverpool?
Why Liverpool?
Must be a European thing.
Yeah, it's a Liverpool is a football club, and it's one of the most accomplished clubs in history. And you know, we have a saying in soccer that you don't really choose your club that you support. The club chooses you. So I happened to be following a season, and I have to say I'm a relatively fresh Liverpool fan compared to others. 7 years ago, I followed a season of Liverpool. I was a Liverpool fan a little bit before because they had a Polish goalkeeper, but then they had a season where they were playing the Champions League, which is the most prestigious competition in the world, which is a European club league. And at the time, I was writing a paper about the influence of Liverpool Football Club on British culture for my bachelor's degree. And it so happened that while I was studying on the history of the club, that club won the Champions League in the most spectacular fashion you can ever imagine, and I bet for the next 50 years there's not going to be a final like that. And you know, I was writing about Liverpool, and they had a Polish goalkeeper who had a big hand in them winning the European Cup. So here I am, a big Liverpool fan, and I go to Liverpool games whenever I can, actually. And the tickets are fucking expensive and difficult to get.
Another question from Pinu242. Carmac, you've been in esports for a long while now. Do you have a favorite era or period in esports? Good question.
I was a relative. If you compare esports experiences to sex, then I was a relative virgin that jerked himself off a couple of times. But then I went to ESWC 2003, and I had the most mind-blowing sex of my life there. And that was July 2003. That's where I really, really believed in esports. For the first time, really believed in esports, and I was completely mesmerized with what the French guys have pulled off. Because what they had is, for the first time, they held the finals matches and the most important highlight matches inside a cinema auditorium with 1,000 people inside, with you know, split screens, soundproof headsets, a big giant screen commentary and everything. Heartbeat monitors, absolutely amazing show. Rarely ever does a tournament in today beat that level of quality and that level of atmosphere that particular tournament had. So that month is my favorite ever period in esports. But I'm really enjoying the StarCraft period these days. It's things are really moving very quickly.
Yeah. From Enmity 777, what is your favorite non-esports game to play? And I'm interested too. Do you play these?
Soccer, I guess.
Okay.
Anything else on a PC would be esports, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess you could have a casual game. Maybe you enjoy Angry Birds. You talk about it a lot.
Let me see. To be honest, these days I play League of Legends only. Before that, I played StarCraft 2 only. Before that, I played Quake Live only, and before that, I played Unreal Tournament only. And that's all I ever really played on a PC, barring a couple of stints with The Witcher and Diablo 3, I think. I don't recall playing any other single-player games, so I don't really have any interest for video games. It appears Metal Gear Solid 4 is a good game as well.
There you go. There you go. Red Eye actually had a serious question. Did you prefer doing what you do now? Or, sorry, did you prefer what you were doing in 2005, like at ESWC, or do you prefer what you're doing now?
I'm not going to answer exactly like he would want me to answer, but I'm going to say I had more fun doing the old job, and I get more pride doing this job.
All right. I think this might be the last one from Aquila SC. Do you think esports should have one super important tournament like the Olympics that reigns above all the others? It only happens once in a long while.
Not necessarily, to be honest. I mean, there are many ways to mold and construct the esports ecosystem / universe, and doing that is one of them. But tennis is a good example of having 4 highlights a year, each of them just equally important, and each of them very prestigious. So there is no one right way to build an ideal esports ecosystem.
And with that, I think we are done with Real Talk. Carmac, do you have any shout-outs?
I suppose my wife for putting up with me, but
okay.
And everybody else who deserves a shout-out, you know who you are. So I'm just not going to mention them because I'm really bad at remembering all those names. There's a lot of people.
I feel kind of like a dick asking this. The next ESL event where people can check out the ESL and IM, that will be... Can you tell us anything? Tell us what to look forward to, what to look for. November in Asia. There you go. And check back next week, and we'll post stuff. All right. Well, Carmac, there's going to be some controversy around it, but there was no choice that we had. So. All right. Sorry about that. Not a problem. Carmac, thank you so much. This has probably been my favorite Real Talk that I think I've done thus far. Absolute pleasure, man. It was awesome to have you here. I cannot wish better things for you ahead. And, yeah, we all look forward to the next DSL event. Great to be there. All right. We'll see you later, man. Thank you so much for coming on. Great to be here. What the hell am I saying? Great to be here. Thank you. Thank you. You've been a wonderful host. And, thank you. I'm sorry for babbling so much. Not a problem, man. We all loved it. So real quick, I do need to wrap some stuff up here. So right now my next guest is kind of up in the air. Justin Wong and Ness T have both confirmed, but we haven't locked in a date or figured out really when we're going to be recording that yet. I do have someone that I thought was going to be a dream and I thought was never going to happen. And it turns out that they're probably going to come on the show. But I can't talk about who it is. Carmac, I've got you muted right now. I know you're trying to talk to me, so I just wanted to say that. But their PR agency is still waiting to get back to me. But if they do come on, it'll be... You can't hear them. You can't hear them. But if they do come on, it'll actually be probably one of the biggest things that I've done in my career thus far. But that's the biggest cock tease I've ever done as well. But I apologize. I will hope to announce that as soon as possible. Check back on YouTube and Twitter for updates on State of the Game as well as Real Talk here in the future. If you're watching me right now on Twitch, please follow the channel, subscribe to the channel. Carmac, I'm going to unmute you. What are you saying?
Jessica Biel.
Jessica Biel is not going to be on Real Talk. Anyways, that's going to do it, guys. If you're watching here on Twitch, I'm going to close the show out and run a couple commercials. Stick around if you want to support. That was a 2.5-hour show with no commercials. So if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe and check out some of the other Real Talks if you've never watched the show before. We are out. I've been up for about 23 hours now. I'm going to go catch some sleep. We'll see you guys later. Peace. And Carmac, thank you once again for coming on the show.